Once upon a time, in a quiet little African village, surrounded by rolling green hills and whispering trees, there lived a tortoise named Kolo. Kolo was not the fastest creature, nor was he the strongest, but he was known far and wide for one thing, his cleverness. Every animal in the forest knew that if there was a problem to be solved, Kolo could find a way out. However, his cleverness was often mixed with greed and a tendency to look for the easiest way to get what he wanted. One sunny morning, the smell of fresh porridge drifted through the air from the village. The women were cooking big pots of it for a feast to celebrate the end of the harvest. The scent of the porridge, sweet, rich, and warm, spread all the way to the edge of the forest where Kolo lived. His little nose twitched as he lifted his head from his leafy bed. That smells delicious," he murmured to himself. His stomach gave a little growl. I must have some of that porridge. But there was one problem. The villagers didn't trust Kolo very much. He had a habit of showing up at feasts, pretending to be a guest, and sneaking off with more food than anyone else. This time, the villagers had decided they would be careful. They locked up the kitchen area and told everyone that no one was allowed to touch the food until the feast began. Still, Kolo was not one to give up easily. He thought and thought. How could he get a taste of that porridge without being caught? Then he had an idea. "Ah," he said, tapping his shell with one claw, "I will go to the village and pretend to help them. Once they trust me, I'll find a way to reach the porridge." So Kolo slowly made his way to the village, his shell gleaming in the morning sun. When he arrived, he greeted everyone warmly. "Good day, friends," he said cheerfully. "What a lovely day for a feast. How may I help?" The villagers, though suspicious, were kind people. They believed in giving everyone a chance to do good. The chief, an elderly man with wise eyes, nodded. "Very well, Tortoise, if you truly wish to help, guard this pot of porridge while we prepare the decorations. Do not let anyone touch it until the feast begins." Kolo's heart leapt with joy. He couldn't believe his luck. "Of course, Chief, you can count on me," he said, bowing deeply. The villagers left, and Kolo found himself alone with the big pot of steaming, golden porridge. The smell was even more tempting now. He walked around the pot, admiring it from every side. Just a small taste. He whispered to himself, "Just one little bite to make sure it's cooked well." He dipped a wooden spoon into the porridge and tasted it. "Ah," he sighed, closing his eyes. "Perfect, absolutely perfect." But one spoonful was not enough. He took another and another. Before he knew it, he had eaten half the pot. His belly grew round and heavy. He tried to stop, but the porridge was too good. "Maybe just one more," he said, and then another, until suddenly there was almost nothing left in the pot. Kolo gasped. "Oh no, what have I done?" he cried. "The villagers will be furious." He looked around desperately, but there was nowhere to run. He thought and thought. Then another idea came to his clever little mind. "Aha, I will hide inside the pot. When they come, they will think someone else stole the porridge. Once they leave, I'll climb out and sneak away." So Kolo climbed up and squeezed himself into the pot. But the pot was small and round, and his shell was big. He struggled, pushing and twisting until, plop, he was inside. It was dark and warm. "Perfect," he whispered. "Now I'll just wait." Time passed. The villagers soon returned, laughing and chatting, but when they reached the pot, they stopped short. The chief looked down and saw that almost all the porridge was gone. "Who did this?" he thundered. "We trusted the tortoise to guard the food." The villagers looked around, but Kolo was nowhere to be seen. Where could he have gone? One woman asked. "He was right here." The chief frowned. "Bring me a ladle. Let me see what's at the bottom of this pot." He stirred the porridge gently, and suddenly From inside came a muffled voice. MMMPH, stop stirring. It's dark in here. The villagers froze. Did you hear that? One shouted. The chief bent closer. Who's in there? He demanded. It's me, Kolo the tortoise, came the voice. Please stop stirring. I'm getting dizzy. The villagers burst into laughter. They pulled Kolo out of the pot, his shell covered in porridge. So this is how you guard food, eh? The chief said, shaking his head. Kolo hung his head in shame. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I just couldn't resist. The porridge smelled too good. The chief sighed. Your cleverness has gotten you into trouble again, Kolo. You will have to make up for what you have eaten. As punishment, Kolo was told to help clean all the cooking pots after the feast. It was hard work for someone with such short legs and a heavy shell. The villagers laughed as they watched him scrubbing, his face streaked with porridge. But Kolo learned something that day. As he washed the last pot, he whispered to himself, no matter how clever I am, greed always makes me foolish. From then on, he tried to use his cleverness for good things, helping others, finding ways to share rather than to take. Yet Kolo's adventures didn't end there. Some weeks later, another feast was planned in a nearby village. Word of his porridge incident had spread everywhere. The children would sing teasing songs whenever he passed. Musical note, tortoise, tortoise, in the pot, couldn't stop eating, ate the lot. Musical note, Kolo would smile and pretend not to hear, though deep down he was embarrassed. Still, the smell of food always stirred his curiosity. When he reached the neighboring village, he promised himself he wouldn't repeat his mistake. This time, he said, I will be wise. I'll show them I've changed. So, when the villagers asked for help with the feast, he agreed, but with one condition. Please, he said, don't give me the porridge pot. Give me something else to do. The villagers laughed. All right, tortoise, you may fetch water from the river. Kolo nodded. Perfect, he said, but as he went to the river, he saw women washing vegetables and men roasting maize nearby. The smells again filled the air. He said, a little maize wouldn't hurt, right? But then he stopped. No, he told himself firmly. Remember what happened last time. He turned away, though it was hard. For once, Kolo chose wisdom over greed. At the feast that evening, the villagers noticed how well he behaved. He didn't eat before anyone else, didn't sneak away with food, and even helped serve others. The chief of that village smiled at him. You've changed, Tortoise, he said kindly. Maybe you're not just clever, you're wise now. Kolo felt proud. He realized that wisdom was better than trickery, and honesty brought more respect than greed ever could. From then on, he became known not just as the clever tortoise, but as the wise one. Years later, when the younger animals asked him about the pot of porridge, he would chuckle and say, Ah, that old story. You see, my children, even the cleverest of us can fall when our stomachs rule our minds, but every mistake can be a lesson if we choose to learn from it. He told them how he had hidden in the pot, how embarrassed he was when they pulled him out, and how that one silly mistake taught him humility. There is no shame in being hungry, he would say, but there is shame in stealing what is not yours. Patience and honesty always bring better rewards. The young ones listened wide-eyed, laughing at his antics but remembering his words. Sometimes, when food was scarce, they would remind each other, don't be like tortoise in the pot. It became a saying in the forest, passed from one generation to the next. One day, long after Kolo had grown older and slower, he was invited to the same village where it had all happened years ago. The chief who had scolded him before was now very old too. When Kolo arrived, the villagers welcomed him warmly. They had prepared a feast once again, and the chief, smiling, said, Tortoise, will you guard the porridge this time? the crowd burst into laughter. Kolo laughed too, shaking his shell. "Oh no," he said with a grin, "I've learned my lesson, but I can help serve it instead." So he helped ladle out the porridge to the children, making sure everyone had enough before taking any for himself. And when he finally sat down to eat, the porridge tasted sweeter than it ever had before, not because of the flavor, but because he had earned it honestly. That night, as the stars twinkled above the village and the laughter of the feast drifted through the air, Kolo felt content. He had learned that true satisfaction doesn't come from clever tricks or stolen pleasures, but from honesty, patience, and sharing. And so, the story of Kolo, the tortoise, and the pot of porridge spread far and wide, told by parents to their children and by elders around fires on cool nights. Each retelling carried the same message: cleverness is good, but without honesty and self-control it can lead to foolishness. And even the cleverest tortoise can end up stuck in his own pot if he lets greed take charge. Many years later, when Kolo was long gone, travelers still heard the villagers tell his story. They pointed to the old clay pot that stood near the chief's hut and said, "That's the very pot where Tortoise hid." Children would giggle and imagine his little legs kicking inside, covered in porridge. But after the laughter, there was always a quiet moment, as the elders reminded them, "Be smart, but be good. Be clever, but be kind." Some say that even today, if you listen carefully near the old village, you can hear the whisper of Kolo's laughter on the wind, reminding everyone that no matter how tempting something may be, wisdom is sweeter than porridge.